Tekken move lists are very long, and while it is partly due to the sheer amount of stances and strings in the game, it is also due to the numerous moves that are tied to directional inputs. Moves like down forward ones and hop kicks, where you need to input a direction and the button at the same time if you want the move to come out. But what does "at the same time" really even mean? Tekken 8 runs at 60 FPS, so if we want to take that phrase literally, we would have to input every single button within a 60th of a second of the corresponding directional input. Of course, we don't run around doing just frames every time we want to punish a -12 move or do a simple low poke. So evidently, the game offers some kind of leniency when it comes to inputting a direction and the button at the same time. In this video, I'll be testing this leniency concerning certain directions and sharing some interesting outcomes that result from stretching this leniency to its limits. I'll first be talking about down-related inputs, which I have the most confidence talking about because they are very simple to grasp and are the best documented ones thanks to Kilo's videos on crouch levels. So I'll just try to talk about them from the perspective of a player who's trying to do standing moves as slow as possible, as opposed to a player who's trying to do while standing and full crouch moves as fast as possible. The first thing to know about these inputs is that their window of leniency is no more than 6 frames. If you hold any of these directions for 6 frames or less and press a button, the standing move will come out. But if you hold the direction for more than 6 frames and then press the button, the move that comes out will either be a generic move or a special version of that if applicable to your character. Regarding that 6 frame window, only the down input really matters. The game only checks how long the down direction has been held. If it's been held for 7 frames or more, your crouching move will come out. So if you try to trick the game by changing inputs to keep you standing, it won't work. However, everything I have just said goes out the window when highs and throws come into the mix. That's because if you do crouch under a move during any of the first 5 frames of a crouch, the game will automatically send you into an advanced crouching state where performing standing moves is impossible. For example, let's say I want to do a down forward 1. Even though I can hold down forward for 5 frames before I press 1 and still get a down forward 1, if I accidentally duck under a jab during any of those 5 earlier frames, the move that will come out will not be a down forward 1, but a crouching down jab. Another thing to remember about moves with down-related inputs is that their actual speed will never change. If your character has an 18 frame down 1, whether you input down and 1 on the same frame, or you press down for 5 frames before pushing 1, the amount of time between you hitting 1 and the move hitting the opponent will always be 18 frames. However, the same thing cannot be said about up-related inputs, which are weird to say the least. Regarding these inputs, the window of leniency we have with them is exactly 14 frames. This means that you can hold up back, up or up forward for exactly 13 frames before pressing the corresponding button, and the intended move will still come out. This window of leniency is more than double the length of the window of the down-related inputs, which is interesting in its own regard. But what is more interesting than that is what happens when we stretch this window to its limits. Some moves' animations will play out faster. Some will skip a few frames that are in the normal version of the move to make it play out faster. Some moves will outright have a different animation depending on how much you delay pressing the button. In some cases, it is minor. In others, it's blatant. But every time, it has the same purpose, which is to make the moves faster in an attempt to make it catch up to its original speed. Obviously, not all moves do this, and when it comes to a rule that separates the moves that catch up to their normal speeds from the ones that don't, either there is no rule, or I just couldn't find any. However, there are a few trivial conditions that it must fulfill in order to be eligible to try to catch up to its normal speed, like how it cannot be an evasive move, a power crush, or be faster than 15 frames as a whole. Other than that, I have no idea what makes a move able or unable to do this. Some standing moves do it while others don't. Some jumping moves will do it while others don't. And sometimes even the same move is both able and unable to do it depending on how you did it. Although it would take too much time to lab how much frames are deleted from every single move, I have labbed this mechanic in hop kicks, more precisely King's hop kick. But this info still holds for all 15 frame hop kicks, so don't worry. As you can see, if you input down forward and 4 on the same frame, obviously nothing happens. You get a 15 frame hop kick and that's it. But if you press 4 and the next frame you pressed up forward on, the game will deduct 1 frame from the hopkick's animation, so you still get a 15 frame hopkick, directional inputs included. Now here's when it starts getting dicey. If you hold up forward for 2 frames before you press 4, the game will either deduct 1 or 2 frames. Sometimes it'll deduct 1 frame, sometimes it'll do 2. But the outcome is that if you include those 2 direction frames, your hopkick comes out at either 15 or 16. And here, we start noticing that even though the game is helping the move catch up to its original speed, it fails to do so past 2 frames of delays. And as we keep on adding more and more delay frames, we eventually reach the 13 frame limit, where you'll only have to wait 7 frames from the time you pressed 4 for the hopkick to connect, creating a hopkick that is 20 frames long but is only 7 frames startup, if that makes any sense. But aside from all this talk about speed and whatnot, it's really fun to see how each move interacts with this catch-up mechanic, and I would like to hear your thoughts concerning any character-specific discoveries if you find them to be interesting. The last inputs I have tested before making this video were the dashing inputs. To be precise, forward dashing and back dashing. When it comes to the forward dash, we don't have one window of leniency, but 2. One of which is also divided into 2, for a total of 3 windows. This first split is dependent on how far you are from your opponent. That's because if you are within a certain range and press forward, your character will do a simple dash. If you are not within that range, your character will start a running animation. If this is the case, you only get a 12 frame window from the frame you input the second forward on. If you wait any longer to press a button, the move that'll come out will be the running move corresponding to that button. If you are within that range, however, you either have a 20 or 30 frame window from the moment you press the second forward on to push a button. And again, as far as I know, it is completely random whether a move has a 20 or 30 frame window. The randomness is even worse now because even the few conditions that apply to those up-related inputs don't exist here. But in these times of randomness, we can at least find solace in the fact that whether you press a button on the 1st, the 20th, or the 30th frame, it doesn't change the speed of the attack, just like the aforementioned down, down forward, and down back moves. For moves that require a back input, I was pleasantly surprised when I found that they were pretty uncommon in the game, so even though they're also pretty random, not much testing was needed as we really don't see them much in the game anyway. So here's the list of the moves with a back input and how many frames you can wait before pressing the button after the second back. As far as uses for this knowledge go, I do believe the Tekken team is very competent. And that they would never allow us to abuse broken glitches like tricking the game into thinking that we pressed the first 13 frames with up forward during neutral, when we in fact pressed it during the recovery of a move, allowing for a true 7 frame hopkick. Until proven possible, let's just believe that this bug hasn't slipped through their very robust anti-glitch net. Going back to practical uses for this tech, I'd like to say it's minimal, because in most situations where it would be usable, a simple fuzzy guard or side step would yield better results. But here's a concrete example of where this tech could be used. Nevertheless, it still remains very situational, and even when those situations arise, it's still overshadowed by better, more reliable tech. And unless people find a way to do the thing I mentioned earlier, this video should only serve as a sort of tidbit for the Tekken nerds out there, and is not to be taken as a resource in order to improve in Tekken. Anyways, that's about it. Till next time.